What if you could name your fear and know how to overcome it? That is the premise of today's episode on the Bring the Mothers Home podcast. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Joy Anderson. And if you are a purpose driven female entrepreneur who is passionate about building your own business and fulfilling your mission without sacrificing your family, then we invite you to join the Bring the Mothers Home movement, where we'll help you gain clarity, confidence, and courage to rise to your full potential and become who you were made to be. So, when I have talked about the Phoenix journey, and you know that in our past episodes, we talked about having us in our ordinary world. And this Phoenix journey is based on the hero's journey. And so, when it's kind of like an overlap of like, here's a proven framework that's been worked in, forever on every book, movie, TV episode ever is built on this hero's journey framework. And then the Phoenix journey basically says, okay, cool. That's how every fictional book is written. That's how every origin story is created for any expert. Somebody who's like, hey, these are the things I went through. This is what I achieved, how I transformed. That's great. But that's all in hindsight. Like that's all in hindsight, 2020, right? And that's like real life. You're looking back to say, okay, what did I go through? How did I achieve that? What did I transform into to make a good story? But fiction authors, I mean, they're like, okay, well, how am I going to script a novel that will make people read this because it's based on the human experience? But for our life, what if we could script our own ending? What if we could write ourselves as the character of our own story and become the hero in our own lives? And not only that, though, more importantly, what if we actually wrote into the script the achievement we wanted to go, the goal we wanted to achieve, and the person we wanted to become? And along that way, we knew with a certainty when we were going to have fear try to overtake us, when we were going to have tests come immediately afterward, and know how to overcome those. So here we are then. We've talked about the ordinary world. We've gone through the call to adventure, which was yesterday's episode, as you know. And in that episode, we set out our big, audacious goal. Now, if it was big enough for you, you should be shaking in your boots right now, right? I mean, you've had a day to live with this big, audacious goal on your heart and see the aftermath of, did the fear come immediately after? Yes or yes? So, right after the call to adventure comes the refusal of the call, the reluctance of the call, the who am I to do this thing, right? You get scared, you're nervous, right? Like, and then all the questions start flying in. But what about this? What if this? In fact, my good friend Rita Farina calls it the what if monster. What if, and then you insert any scenario. What if this happens, right? That's just naturally fear, though. If we just identify, anxiety, being scared, nervous, they're all the base root of emotion is fear. And so if fear is a natural part, then what we can recognize is we can say, okay, but every fear feels a little bit different. Even though it is fear, it still shows up in a different way. And this is when I had the big aha going through this for myself was immediately I had a certain kind of fear come to me that made me want to not even go forward on the journey, right? And I call these 8 types of fear 8 growth blockers. Because truly, the whole journey you want to go on is to grow, right? I mean, anytime you go achieve a goal or you transform into your true identity, like you are growing as yourself, right? As a person. But the thing is fear is like wants to keep you safe, wants to keep you in the known, doesn't want you to move into the unknown world. It wants to keep you in the ordinary world. It knows there's a quote that says, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. And I think that's how fear works too. Is fear is like, hey, your life might not be perfect right now, but at least I understand it and I know how to keep you safe right now. So your mind is like this, beautifully orchestrated thing that keeps you safe. But the truth is that most things it interprets as danger isn't actual danger, right? I think there's like a stat out there, 90 or 99% of everything that you worry about never happens, right? So therefore, if most things that you worry about never happen, then we can say to our brain, hey, most stuff that you're scared about, we don't need to be scared about. But we can't just talk like that. Like that was my problem. Is like, there's so many times I've had big ideas, but I haven't gone on the journey to go achieve them. Why is that? Why do I hold myself back when I have the big ideas and then I never take the first steps? I never go on the journey. I never cross the threshold, right? Into unknown world. Why is that? And then I realized there's certain reasons that hold us back. They're the growth blockers. So what I'd like to do is I want to share the story about how I identified my growth blocker and then said, but I can't be the only one experiencing this. And I think there's other growth blockers that that come up depending on the journey. Okay. Because every fear is going to come up differently depending on the journey that you go on. Right. And so mine specifically, here's how it showed up for me. May 26th, big idea, call to adventure. What if I could fully transform into my true identity, shut off all the parts of me that aren't me, including excess weight, including depression, including this idea that I'm an introvert, because honestly, I'm not an introvert, but I just put on that identity because I had become a recluse, right? But that wasn't me. Like, what if I could actually shut off all those parts of me and then fully step into my calling that's been there for so long, but really embrace that, become the leader of the Bring the Mothers Home movement, create this podcast, go on this health journey, run my 5th marathon, speak on stages, and especially, this big audacious goal of speaking on stage at Funnel Hacking Live in fall 2024, to go on that journey. Whoa, right? Like, what a journey of epic proportions, one that I have never said publicly out loud that I've ever wanted to go on before. It's always been in my heart, but I've never publicly said it before. So in May 26th, when I had this big idea, immediately I was like, let's go. And what am I going to do the next day? I need to document the journey. So the next day, which is going to be May 27th, how am I going to document the journey? And I immediately went into I have to figure this all out right now. And I have to know the plan. I have to know what I'm going to sell. I have to know how I'm going to help people. I have to know, am I doing a challenge, a boot camp, a workshop, a webinar? Am I doing a retreat? Am I doing a mastermind? Am I doing high ticket, low ticket? Like, all these questions came up that night within hours, forcing me to say, hey, if you don't answer these questions, you're not going to take the steps to go on the journey. Figure these out now, because then tomorrow you can start documenting the right way, right? Start documenting your journey. I'm asking Michael, but what should I do? Should I do a podcast, a YouTube, a blog? How should I do this? What should we do for the next year? How am I going to transform? This is really scary, but if I have a framework to follow, or if I create the framework or something, I don't know, I guess I'll figure it out. And he's like, I don't know, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. And so, not only was I becoming overwhelmed. Do you ever do that? When you have this big idea, you become overwhelmed. And then what happens is your brain's like, hey, I don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling of being overwhelmed. Let's stop thinking about it. Let's forget about it, because this doesn't feel good. And all the tasks that you set out, because you're like, there's the goal, and you already know some of the tasks, and you're like, I have never before in my life done those tasks. But on this journey, I will have to do them. And your brain starts pulling you back, doesn't it? It's like, hey, who are you to think you could do those things? That's not you. You don't do those things. We're over here. We do this, remember? Right? Pulls you back into the known, the ordinary, the quote safe, right? Your comfort zone, as it's called. And so to kind of get away from those questions, those are a lot of steps, I don't really know what to do there. I just started, going back on the internet. And at that time, everyone else was putting out their videos of I want to speak at Funnel Hacking Live. And they're all, putting out their videos of how they want to speak and then go vote for these people, right? And I'm I start looking at the videos of people who had said they want to speak at Funnel Hacking Live this year. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're really, really good. They've been doing this for years and years and years. And while I have been obviously building my business for 15 years and, have a 7-figure business, it's not on this new framework that I want to go teach, right? It's not on my passion, my passion project, right? My mission, which is what I really want to go spend the rest of my life talking about. And so I feel like I almost have to create this thing from nothing, right? Literally birth a new business out of nothing. And it's overwhelming. It's absolutely overwhelming. And as I'm looking at all these experts, putting out their vote for, hey, I want to be on the stage next or this year. As I'm looking at that, I'm just like, and the voices start going again, right? Who are you? Who are you to think you could do that? Who's going to listen to you? Your framework is built off the hero's journey framework, and it's not this like crazy amazing new idea, because at the time it wasn't yet. I hadn't developed I didn't even have the name The Phoenix Journey. All I had was an idea. What if we could script our life? What if we could write the ending to our own story? What if we could know the trials, the fears that were going to come up and know how to overcome them, so we didn't give up on ourselves? That's the only question I had at that day. So all these fears boiling up, right? Overcoming me. Yes. And I go to bed that night, confused, not knowing the next morning how I'm going to document, scared that I don't have what it takes and that I can't make it through this journey. Because come on, a 50-pound health journey, that's a significant thing, right? And just feeling absolutely less than in that moment. It didn't matter the successes I'd built for myself in 15 years. None of that mattered at that time, because where I was at at the beginner stage. I was the newbie in town. I was I don't even know what this thing is. I don't even know how I'm going to help people. I don't even know how I'm going to help myself. All I had was an idea. Maybe you've been in that state too, where it's like, you've got that big idea, but you're confused by all the steps. You're overcome by the people who've come before you, the people who are in the space around you. They're doing so much. Why don't just let them go have their moments, right? But inside, I knew there was something, but I was overcome, confused, overwhelmed, scared at the end of the day. So I go to bed wondering if I'm even going to go on this journey at all. May 27th, I wake up, and with the confusion still there, because I hadn't figured out what I was going to do. I didn't have all the answers. I just went on my day as normal. And that's very common for you to have this big idea. And perhaps that's what you identified yesterday. And then this morning you woke up without all the answers, overwhelmed, also feeling like, who am I to go do this thing? I've never once before been able to accomplish it in my life. Who am I to think I could do it this time? How is it going to be any different than the last time? And I remember this very specific moment. I remember this specific moment when I pretty much shut my dream down. I had just taken the kids, I don't even know where, but we had come home and they all went inside, and I was getting stuff out of the trunk of our SUV. And as I was shutting the trunk to our SUV, and I'm, clicking the thing, and it's coming down, and it's shutting on our car, I just had this overwhelming fear again come over me. And this phrase, who are you? And that's when I was like, okay, I guess this is nothing. I guess like every other time when I get the big idea, I will shut myself down. Every single time I will hold myself back. I can't move forward. I guess this is just my life. I imagine you felt there before, haven't you? So next couple days go by, and Michael says to me at one point, hey, what about that idea? I'm like, yeah, it was a cool idea. I don't know. I can't figure it out, maybe in the future sometime. Now, something happened within the days of May 26th and June 1st that changed everything for me. But we're going to talk about that in a future episode. The one phrase that came to me after I woke up from a food coma nap, you guys know those, those naps when you've binged so many foods and used an unhealthy coping strategy, and it just kind of lights out, and you just, you got to sleep. It's the middle of the day. But what do you do, right? You can only stare at your computer for so long without things really processing, right? So, but before I started getting all the downloads from God, before I started getting all the frameworks for what would soon become the Phoenix Journey, I didn't have a name. I didn't have any steps. I just had this big audacious goal, and this overwhelming fear that was stopping me. So let's name the fear. Because in that moment when I, shut the trunk to my car and thought, this is like every other time. Why can't I change? Why do we have to keep cycling over and over? And then as these frameworks started evolving, I realized if I could have named my fear in that moment, which I know now what the name is, but if I could have spoken to the fear instead of this unknown thing, my mind that just, screws with me, what if I could actually have spoken it by name and said, hey, I know you. I know you, voice. I know that voice in my head. Now, Michael always says, don't say you got voices in your head, Joy. But we do, and it's us. And we're saying the things in our head, right? So it's all good. But if you can name it, if you can identify it, if you can be aware that that is what's going on, and that's all it is, then it's like, hey, this isn't a big deal. I know what this is. I know how to overcome this. I feel like I can now speak to it and say, I know I can identify, right? So let's go ahead and do this. So over the process of many weeks, I created these 8 growth blockers, but it all stemmed in this moment of being completely overcome by fear, so paralyzed with overwhelm, on the fence of will I do it, won't I do it? I hate being on the fence, by the way, don't you? That this finally evolved, okay? I call them the 8 growth blockers. And if you can name your growth blocker, if you can name your fear, you know how to overcome it. Now, in the Phoenix Journey Retreat, we teach you how to overcome these. And I don't have time to go into that in detail here, but I'm going to read the 8 growth blockers, the definition of them, kind of the description of them, because I bet that as I read these, you're going to identify with one of them, the voice that's been in your head, the thing that's been holding you back. And they show up differently at different times. So, for instance, mine, which you'll learn about, is called the saboteur. It's the last one I'll read today. The saboteur is a fear of success. But there's other fears that we experience depending on other goals we try to achieve, other journeys we try to go on. And so it's not like I only have one fear. I have many different fears, but it's what you need to think about is the goal that I'm trying to achieve. What is the one fear? What is the one growth blocker, the primary growth blocker that is holding me back right now from pursuing that big audacious goal? That's the one we need to identify right now. Because as you go on different journeys, you will have different fears show up, okay? And as you go through different tests and trials, you'll have different fears show up. But right now, all we need to identify is the primary growth blocker, the one fear that is holding you back from going on this journey. Okay. Now you'll have like variations of others, but one of them is going to be like, oh, snap. That's the voice in my head, Joy. That's what I'm feeling right now. When you talk about shaking in my boots, that's me right now. Right. So here we go. The first, and I said there's 8. So let's read through them. And as you go through them, I want you to identify which one is yours. Right. Okay. So we've got the first one, the perfectionist. You have a fear of failure. The fear of failure is the apprehension or anxiety about not achieving desired outcomes or goals. It involves the worry of making mistakes, falling short of expectations, or experiencing setbacks that may lead to feelings of inadequacy or disappointment. Here's how it shows up in your life. You think, I'm going to mess this up. So again, think about the things in your mind, right? You don't want to make a mistake and then feel incompetent, so you obsess over details, striving for flawlessness and often delaying action. You're worried that everything will fall apart and you'll be seen as a complete failure. Each day you find yourself saying, it's not good enough yet. So you lose sleep over small imperfections and you're paralyzed by the fear of taking the first step. If you don't defeat this blocker, you'll eventually miss out on valuable opportunities due to overanalysis and inaction. Okay, so think about, is that me? So that one, number 1, the growth blocker is perfectionist, the fear of failure. Number 2, the growth blocker is the people pleaser. You have a fear of rejection. The fear of rejection is the unease or dread of being excluded, dismissed, or unaccepted by others. It involves the fear of being judged, criticized, or abandoned. which can lead to seeking constant approval and avoiding situations where rejection may occur. How this shows up in your life. You think they won't accept me. You don't want to be excluded and feel unwanted, so you seek constant approval and avoid asserting your own needs. You're worried that if you don't please everyone, they will abandon you and you'll be all alone. Each day you tell yourself, I can't say no. You suppress your personal desires to accommodate others, and you worry about not being liked. If you don't defeat this blocker, you'll eventually lose your sense of self and feel dissatisfied in sacrificing your own happiness for others. Now, there was a time in my life when that fear ruled my world. Absolutely. Now, the third one is the growth blocker is the wallflower. You have a fear of judgment. Are any of these resonating with you, right? Based on different times in your life or maybe right now? So, the fear of judgment is the fear of being evaluated, criticized, or negatively assessed by others. It involves the concern of being seen as inadequate, incompetent, or making mistakes, which can lead to self-consciousness and a reluctance to express oneself authentically. Here's how this shows up. You think, what will people think of me? You don't want to be criticized and feel humiliated, so you shy away from putting yourself out there and participating fully. You're worried that if you make a mistake or embarrass yourself, everyone will judge and ridicule you, and your reputation will be ruined. Each day you think, I should keep my ideas to myself. You avoid social interactions and you struggle with being invisible. If you don't defeat this blocker, you'll eventually feel unheard and unseen, leading to loneliness and underachievement. Now, the fourth, I believe this is number 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. The fourth is the control freak. You have a fear of the unknown. The fear of the unknown is the fear of uncertain or unfamiliar situations, outcomes, or circumstances. It involves the discomfort or anxiety about not having control or predictability, which can lead to a desire for stability, routine, or detailed planning. Here's how this shows up in your life. You think, I don't know what's going to happen. You don't want to be out of control and feel helpless, so you meticulously plan and try to micromanage every aspect of your life. You're worried that if you don't have everything under control, something bad will happen and you won't be able to handle it. Each day you tell yourself, I must plan for every possibility. You worry about unforeseen changes and you resist spontaneous plans or decisions. If you don't defeat this blocker, you'll eventually find yourself unable to cope with life's unpredictable nature, leading to overwhelming stress and anxiety. There was absolutely a time when that was ruling my life as well. Now, the fifth growth blocker is the doubter. You have a fear of inadequacy. The fear of inadequacy is the fear of not being capable, skilled, or competent enough. It involves self-doubt, low self-esteem, or feelings of worthlessness, which can hinder taking action or pursuing opportunities to a belief in one's insufficiency. Here's how it shows up in your life. You think, I'm not good enough. You don't want to fall short and feel worthless, so you constantly doubt yourself, second guess your abilities, and hesitate to take action. You're worried that if you fail or don't meet expectations, you'll confirm your deepest fears of being inadequate and unworthy. Each day you tell yourself, I can't do this. You avoid opportunities out of fear of failure, and you struggle to trust your own judgment. If you don't defeat this blocker, you'll eventually limit your own growth, failing to realize your true potential. That hits hard, doesn't it? And then we've got number 6, the growth blocker, the clinger. You have a fear of loss. Now, these next two, number 6 and number 7, are kind of similar, but they're a little bit different, so pay attention. The fear of loss is the fear of losing something or someone valuable or important. It involves the apprehension or distress associated with the potential absence, separation, or deprivation of people, possessions, or aspects of life that are deeply cherished. Here's how this shows up in your life. You think, I can't bear to lose this or them. You don't want to be deprived and feel empty, so you hold on to people or situations tightly, often resisting change and letting go. You're worried that if you let go or lose what you hold dear, you will lose everything and be left with nothing, feeling completely alone and abandoned. Each day you say, I can't let go. You hold on to the past. Think about holding on to memories, right? And you resist moving forward. If you don't defeat this blocker, you'll eventually find yourself stuck in the past, unable to enjoy the present or look forward to the future. The seventh growth blocker is the attachment seeker. You have a fear of abandonment. The fear of abandonment is the fear of being deserted, forsaken, or left alone. It involves the anxiety or insecurity about losing the support, connection, or presence of significant individuals or experiencing emotional or relational abandonment. Here's how this shows up in your life. You think, they're going to leave me. You don't want to be alone and feel isolated, so you become overly dependent on others, seeking constant reassurance and closeness. You're worried that everyone you love will abandon you, and you'll be left completely alone and unloved. Each day, you find yourself asking, are we okay? You worry about losing loved ones, and you have a difficult time enjoying time alone. If you don't defeat this blocker, you'll eventually become over-reliant on others for your own sense of self-worth, which can lead to toxic relationships and codependency. And then finally, the eighth growth blocker, and this is the one that I was experiencing in that moment, right? Of seeing that giant goal and feeling overwhelmed with all the steps, but also feeling very inadequate. This growth blocker is the saboteur. You have a fear of success. The fear of success is the fear of achieving or attaining success and the associated consequences that come with it. It involves the concern or apprehension about increased expectations, responsibilities, or visibility, which can lead to self-sabotage or fear of not being able to meet the demands of success. Here's how it shows up in your life. You think, I won't be able to handle it. You don't want to take on too much and feel overwhelmed, so you self-sabotage your efforts, subconsciously undermining your own progress or achievements. You're worried that if you succeed, the pressure and expectations will become unbearable, and you'll crumble under the weight of responsibility and end up failing or disappointing everyone. Each day you tell yourself, I can't handle the pressure. You undermine your own success, and you fear standing in the spotlight. If you don't defeat this blocker, you'll eventually prevent yourself from achieving your goals and fulfilling your potential. Now, remember in yesterday's episode, we talked about having, if we've got this giant goal up here, but we can't even handle our life as it currently is. So how in the world could we handle an even bigger life, even bigger demands, even bigger visibility, even bigger chances to fail, if we can't even use healthy coping strategies with our current life? Do you get that? That's where the saboteur was showing up for me. But the good news is now when I start seeing these things come into my life, when I start thinking of the past, I'm like, that's the clinger. You know, we need to think about the present and the future. We can't change the past. And some things we just need to let go of in the past, right? Or when we think about who am I? That's the saboteur, right? Coming in to say, yeah, who are you, right? You think you can't even handle your current life, right? And I kind of get a little jokey with these fears, you know. I'm like, hey, I know you. Hey, I can name you, right? Like I know exactly who you are. I know why you're showing up. You're scared because I'm going to crush. I'm going to crumble under this pressure. That's okay, saboteur. You know why? Because I'm dealing with life in a healthy coping strategy now. I'm dealing with life in a healthy way. And therefore, I'm not buckling under the current life's pressure. And therefore, as I continue to transform, I'm going to continue to evolve and be able to continue to use healthy coping strategies through this entire journey. So I'm not going to buckle, Mr. Saboteur. Does that make sense? So when we can, number one, identify the fear, then we can speak to it. And if we can speak to it, we can overcome it. Because we can understand, I know where you're coming from. Saboteur, you're just trying to keep me safe. You're just trying to protect, you're looking out for me, right? Because in so many times in the past, I've had to put on layer upon protection to just keep myself safe. That's all you're trying to do, Mr. Saboteur. I understand. Thank you for looking out for me. But thankfully, in the frameworks that I'm going to soon learn with the Phoenix Journey, I know I'm going to learn how to do this in a healthy way. So I don't buckle, so I don't crumble, so I can evolve, but in a healthy way. Are we getting this? Are we loving this? All right, friends, we are at a critical moment in the Phoenix Journey framework, but more importantly, in the Bring the Mothers Home podcast. I'll tell you why. Yesterday, I put out a big push and I added $50,000 worth of prizes that you could win as we are going down this path of trying to hit top 50, my friends, in the Apple Podcast chart for the self-improvement category. Now, that's a huge ask, but guess what? After yesterday's push, we almost doubled the amount of listens, but we still need your help. Today is a critical day because we just had a giant moment yesterday, which Apple Podcast is obviously going to recognize. But today is super critical, especially this morning. So if you have not yet, here's the things I need you to do, okay? Here's what I need you to do. You're going to go into your Apple Podcast app. You can do that on your iPhone, on your iPad, or you can also do that on your MacBook, right? Okay, go into the Apple Podcast app. It's the purple app right there, and go ahead and open it up. Once you do, make sure that you search for Bring the Mothers Home. And after you search for it, you're going to see the episode. It looks just like this, the show. Okay, here we go. So it looks just like that. There we go. So search for Bring the Mothers Home and it will pop up right there. Okay. Go ahead and click on it. It says Bring the Mothers Home with Joy Anderson. And when you're here in this podcast app, here's what I need you to do for me. Apple Podcasts loves 5 things. Now, the cool thing is that we can not only get our show up to the top of the ratings, top 50 would be insane. This is the same category as Tom Bilyeu, as Marie Forleo, as Trent Shelton, as Jordan Harbinger. The same category. Are you kidding me? And if we could get to top 50 in self-improvement, that's amazing. That tells Apple that we are a good, worthy podcast. People love listening to us, and you love listening to us, most importantly, right? So 5 things Apple loves to see. And if we could keep doing this, it'd be amazing. Number 1, we need to subscribe to the show. If you've already subscribed, you rock, okay? But if you haven't, click on the plus follow at the very top, and subscribe to the show so you always know. We have a new episode posting every single morning, okay? Because I need to keep you in full state. I need to keep your energy, your motivation, your inspiration. I need to keep that high. I got to keep you high on life, right? Not high on other things, not high on food and substances and other behaviors, high on life. Okay, so then scroll down. If we scroll down to the bottom here, keep scrolling down, scroll down. You're going to get to the point where it says the rating, okay? Now, I hope that I've served you. I hope this has helped you, identify your growth blocker so you can name it and speak to it. Say, hey, Mr. Saboteur, or whatever your growth blocker is. I know you. You're just trying to protect me. But let's talk about this for a second. And I'm going to talk to you about how I'm going to protect myself. And we're going to work together on this, okay? So you don't need to hold me back. You don't need to stop me. So if I've helped you on this episode, if I've helped you at all in the last 15 years, I hope that I've earned your 5 stars. You can go ahead and just rate it by just sliding your finger across to give 5 stars there. Amazing. And in fact, you can rate every episode, okay? So every episode you can rate. And then you scroll down and you can write a review, okay? At the very bottom there, write a review and say a couple kind words about the podcast. Apple Podcasts loves subscribers, ratings, and reviews. And they also especially love listens, right? I mean, you got to actually listen to the podcast. So if you have not yet gone through and listened to every episode, this is the time. Every episode builds on the next. So my suggestion is don't just start here randomly. Make sure you start from the trailer and listen up to episode 1, episode 2, and keep going. I believe this is episode 8 we're currently on. So we want to get going here, right? So you go ahead and listen to the trailer right there. It's 6 minutes, but it's 7 minutes, but it is incredibly important because it sets the stage for what's coming next for you. And then you're going to listen to episode 1, episode 2, etc. And you can binge listen to them. And guess what? You can even listen to them a little bit faster. So what you can do is if you come down here, I'll show you where. Anytime you click on an episode, you see that little 1 or 1.5 or 2x down there. You can change the speed of how fast you listen. Personally, I listen to myself on 1.5x speed, but you might need to go 1.25. I'm not sure. 2x is just a little crazy for me. Okay. I don't think you're going to be able to understand what I'm actually saying because I speak pretty fast. And binge listen to them. Could you listen to them this morning as you're going around doing your errands, you're driving in the car, you're cooking, you're cleaning, you're taking your kids to all their summer activities, you're sitting by the pool, right? You're going on your daily walk, all those things. Like just stick it in your ear. Just say, hey, I'm going to go pour into myself right now. That's my hope for you. And then finally, share the podcast. And I've got amazing prizes for you when you do these 5 things. So if you could go to joyanderson.com, you're going to be able to find all the prizes. And then, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and post on this live right now, wherever we are. I'll post the link directly to the podcast contest. But there we go. That's not it. But yeah, go to joyanderson.com. And that's where you're going to find the top has a big bright pink button, and you can click it and be able to get to that podcast contest. But this is an epic moment. Like for this morning, we need to absolutely get all the listens in, all the subscribers in, all the ratings in, all the reviews in, all the shares in. Like go do all the tasks on that page there, and make sure to do all the tasks, because if we can share this podcast out with as many people as possible, it's going to help. Not only cool, you did it, but now maybe you influenced another person to do it, and another and another. And now we can finally share this message, and I can finally fulfill my mission of helping to share the message, right? This is why I'm doing this. I don't do any ads on this podcast. This is my one ask. If you could do those 5 things, that'd be phenomenal. And it would pour back into me the way that I'm trying to pour into you. So again, friends, I hope this has served you. And I'll be back every single morning with another episode of Bring the Mothers Home.